This video should be a requirement for all women of all ages. As a woman that's been on the starch-based diet for over 6 years, I felt as though there was an inadequate amount of information available for women to ensure that this is the healthiest diet for us. In this exclusive interview with Dr. John McDougall, author of The Starch Solution, we get answers to the questions like, do women need extra fat in order to maintain a healthy menstrual cycle? What about for fertility? What about when we're pregnant and when we're breastfeeding and post-menopause? Do we have to change the standard recommendations for the starch-based diet because we are women, different creatures from men? Come on this journey with Dr. McDougall and myself through every part of the human life cycle for women and finally get the answers to the questions that you've been wondering. And for those of you that have never seen my face before, hi, I'm Emmie. Welcome to my channel. I'm happy to have you here. You're now a healthy honey. I'm a nutritionist and the creator of the Slim on Starch program, where you work with me as well as a mindset coach and a nutrition coach to lose weight on a plant-based diet. If you're interested in learning more about that, you can go to healthyemmie.org. The link is in the down bar. Now let's get into the interview.
All right. Do people know me well enough to not need an introduction?
You definitely are a man that doesn't need an introduction, that's for sure. But if you want to give yourself one, then go for it.
Well, sure. I just, people should think of me as a physician who's really reached the peak of his career in my mid-70s. I've enjoyed being a doctor. In fact, I think I'm the luckiest doctor in the world because my patients have gotten well. Most patients, they get a bag full of drugs and a bunch of excuses, but my patients have gotten well. I like to write. I am a grandfather, and my focus of attention these days has been, instead of individual patients, which I've seen 12,000 of, instead of my main patient being you folks, I've taken on a whole new aspiration in life, and that is to take on Mother Earth as a patient. She's in big trouble, and the interesting thing is that to save the planet Earth, or at least to make a contribution, all we need to do is the same things that I've been doing for the last 46 years with my patients. Just stop making them sick. Anyway, hello, nice to be with you.
It's nice to be with you too, and you have had such a huge impact, which I know you know. I've given your book to more people than I can count and have hundreds of videos on my YouTube channel thanks to the work that you've done. So you're our God, you're our favorite.
Well, thank you. I really worked hard. I spent my whole adult life trying to learn things, and I still do. I still read about 13 medical journals every month, and I find learning fascinating. So I'm glad I was able to put together for you folks in several books and several videos. That we got a world to change. That's all I can say. And it's got to be a team effort. We need an army.
That's the way I look at it too. And we have a lot to learn from you, but I think one of the things in particular is you went so against the grain of, I'm sure, what you were taught in medical school and what all of your other colleagues were doing. And for us who feel like we're around people, husbands and wives and families that don't eat the way that we do, think about somebody like you who was amongst people doing the complete opposite and treating people in a very medicinal, prescriptive way. You were treating people completely differently.
Right. Back when I started, we're talking about half a century ago, if you mentioned the word diet in the same sentence as the word disease, then what would follow would be a choir singing quack. It was just amazing. I came from a time of ignorance about the importance of food, and where a time when technology became dominant. Good grief, we won World War II. We set off the atomic bomb. We could do anything. You just had to invent the next chemical. We could do anything. At least that's what we thought, but we've proved over the last 60, 70 years you can't. And we have to resort back to the basics. And one of the basics is the human being needs to be fed properly.
So I would like to take this in a direction, I've done so much. The Starch Solution is like my language. And I'd like to talk a little bit about an arena that I don't think there's too much on in YouTube and in interviews. We hear a lot about you with weight loss, and I'm sure we'll talk about this. But I would love to talk about women's health. I got a lot of questions about women's health. So would it be okay if we start there?
Well, that'd be good. That book, by the way, I think it can be purchased from our website. And what we're going to do is we're going to be doing a giveaway. I've got 6 of my 13 books I own. and we're going to start giving them away for people who are on our mailing list. So you might want to get on our mailing list. You get a free book coming out here, I think, next week, and then the women's book will probably come out in the next month or two.
Dr. McDougall, do you still send out your newsletters?
Well, just by internet. Well, actually, what I've done lately is I've updated the newsletters I've written. I don't want to seem egotistical or to misrepresent the fact that there's a lot to learn out there. But over 46 years and with passion about subjects, I've pretty much written everything that I need to write. I find small adjustments in my previous recommendations, even those that are 30 years ago, like the book you're holding your hand is at least 20 years old. And when I go through the recommendations that I've made for women in this book, nothing has to be changed. You might add a few extra drugs when it comes to breast cancer, but most of it is just advertising for the drug companies, old drugs, Me Too drugs. It had, the same thing about the health of women back 30, 40 years ago when I was studying to write this book. Nothing's changed in the last 30, 40 years. Little girls grow into women, and, the women get sick. And the main reason they get sick is because of the food. But there's also a problem with gender bias, which is something I've been well aware of most of my career, is that we have had up until recently a male-dominated medical business. And we mistreated women in every area of medicine. But that's something that's been going on for hundreds of thousands of years. Is this gender bias and male domination of women and so on? You can't change human behavior, or at least you can a little bit, but not a lot.
Well, hopefully through today's video, we can shine some light on women's health before getting into the weight loss stuff. So I would love to ask about the overt fats when it comes to fertility. The people watching this channel are eating starch-based diet, whole foods, plant-based, very low in overt fats. But there's a lot of people out there that say that women have to have overt fats, nuts, seeds, avocado in order for maximum fertility and a healthy menstrual cycle if they're at a healthy weight. What are your thoughts on this?
That's not true. What they're talking about is they're talking about getting omega-3s from fish, getting fish oil and properly myelinating the brain. But the point being is EPA and DHA, which are the essential fats that they're trying to get. Actually, they're not essential fats. They're fats converted from alpha-linolenic and linoleic acid into these secondary fats. The idea being that you have to live in a community that's next to a water body so you can get fish to properly myelinate your nervous system, have babies. Excuse me, there have been hundreds of millions of people that have been terrestrial. They haven't had any contact with water, and they've developed decent societies, haven't they? And the studies done on showing that the human being can't make the proper fats from the basic essential fats is just, the science doesn't support it. We can do that. So you shouldn't be looking for extra fats, particularly in a day and age when pregnancy is associated with obesity. Look at the situation. If you're a pregnant woman, you're a sick woman, and you're an overweight woman, and that's a generalization, of course. Those of you who know better know it's the food, and you got to get the food right to have a normal pregnancy. When I first started in medicine, we used to worry about women gaining weight. And we used to worry about their blood pressure going up and gaining weight in particular. We didn't even give them diuretics just for the weight gain. That's how concerned we were, because they were developing, problems of high blood pressure and edema and so on. It wasn't just the salt. It wasn't just the need of a diuretic. It was a total poor diet that they were eating. So the result of that is when we restricted the food intake of a pregnant woman, she had a small baby. And small babies don't do as well. So the doctors flip-flopped their recommendations and said, oh, no, you got to eat a lot of food. And that's what you're told today is don't restrict the food. And you end up gaining 40, 50, 80 pounds. Why? Look, I'm just going to joke with you. Did our creator design the female incorrectly? So that regardless of what she does in her best time of her life, she just somehow can't get it right. No, of course you don't believe that. What you should believe and understand is that you can't make the wrong food the Western diet right by giving a bunch of pills or a bunch of instructions. The problem is they're eating a diet that, makes people sick. Almost everybody's sick. It's full of food poisons. Food poisons I call animal products and vegetable oils. So if you want to get it right, if you want to get that body to function the way it should during the time of pregnancy or whatever, the whole life, you got to feed it right. And if you try and manipulate the Western diet to make it right, you'll never do it. You can't make a right out of something that wrong.
Mm. I've seen, the scenarios where individuals are not able to have a healthy menstrual cycle. It's either because they are losing weight rapidly, and in that case, it would be from a, biological perspective, wise for the body to shut down menses if it perceives that there's a famine, or if the individual is underweight. But as you're saying, if somebody's eating in abundance in a starch-based diet, getting adequate calories, then this shouldn't be an issue, correct?
I used to say there were 10 billion people who walked this earth. I was corrected. I was told there's 100 billion people. Excuse me. A being is a very, very successful animal. And we can stay alive on diets as simple as potatoes and water. That's how complete the food is, and that's how efficient the human being is. So, population, think about it. In the past, even in most of the world today, up until the last 40 years, people were dying of hunger. They didn't have enough food. They still had babies on these food restricted diets. And I would argue it's just as wrong to do it the other way, and that is to feed in a diet of abundance, a diet for kings and queens, a diet for royalty, aristocrats, all this meat, all these oils, all these cakes and pies, to feed those to a woman and make her so sick. Pregnancy is supposed to be the greatest time of your life, where you're supposed to be physically at your peak. And you end up being sick. You have nausea, you have, morning sickness, you got high blood pressure, diabetes, overweight, and you never get back into your clothes. It doesn't seem right. It's not right. It's the food. All you got to do is fix the food. It always works.
Well, speaking of pregnancy, something I was quite surprised to find when I read this book was that pregnant women don't need as much as I thought just from watching all the movies and the TV shows. You're pregnant, eat. You need this, you need that. You're eating for two. But what I found in this book, which I would love for you to speak to, is that the needs of women when we are pregnant, they're much lower than you would suspect. I think it's an extra 200 something calories per day.
It's 80,000 calories to grow a baby and 2 pounds of protein. So you can do the math. I don't know what, I think it's 280 days is not enough pregnancy. It's been a while since I don't know that figure. Anyway, yeah.
So let's say somebody is going through a pregnancy. One of the questions that I received when I announced that I was interviewing you was, is it safe for a woman to do a starch solution type diet, or even a very slim starch solution diet, like a McDougall maximum weight loss diet, while pregnant? Or are there other things that she has to add in?
Well, she needs to get enough calories, that's for sure. You don't want to end up being underweight. Likewise, you don't want to be overweight. But a starch-based diet provides that nutrition, you end up at ideal weight. So I guess in answer to your question, not only is it acceptable and tolerated by the female body, but a starch-based diet is the best diet for a pregnant woman to consume. She has the best chance of being physically fit, which is important because when it gets to be the time of delivery, if you're not fit, when it gets to be the time of delivery, you'll be threatened with a cesarean section. Why? Was the birth canal designed improperly or just too tiny? No, it's because the babies are so big because women are overnourishing themselves. They eat for 9 months and they end up with this baby that's, 10, 12, 14 pounds. It can't fit out of a birth canal that was designed for a baby that's 5, 6, 7 pounds. They just don't fit. So you got to take them out to the top. And boy, oh boy, you've got a whole load of problems there.
Wow, I had never considered that before, that babies, even in the womb, are becoming overweight, set up right from the get-go.
When I was a baby, 74 years ago, babies used to be 5, 6, 7 pounds.
Wow. Fascinating. Okay, so let's just travel through the female life cycle. So pregnancy done, you have the baby, breastfeeding.
Let's start earlier than that. Let's
Okay,
start.
let's take it back.
Let's start with little kids, little boys and little girls.
Hey, if you're still watching, comment the word encore so we can get Dr. McDougall to come back on the channel.
The way you motivate them is they want to avoid ridicule. So, you think about things that would bother a child, like a little hair out of place, a pimple. The clothes don't fit the way they should. They're not running well on the track. They want to avoid ridicule. So you explain to the child that they need to eat properly so that they don't have the pimple, they don't have the oily skin, etc. They perform well. So that's the way you approach little kids. The way you feed them during their early life, say the first 10 years, it depends upon when they mature. A normal girl has her first menstrual period when she's around 16, normal. That's the intended onset of period, not normal. It's 18 years of age is the latest I've ever heard about the onset of the first menstrual period. This is in Papua New Guinea. But it used to be that, and I've listed a whole bunch of those in the women's book, it used to be that that little girls became women when they were about 15, 16 years old. And now we have little girls becoming women when they're 10 years old or 11 years old. Half of the Black girls in this country have breast buds and pubic hair at age 10. Little boys mature early too. They mature about 4 or 5 years earlier. They're getting beards and so on. Well, I want you to stop and think for a minute what the consequence is of giving little children sexual desires and reproductive functions they're not ready for. 5, 6, 8 years before they should be ready. You have babies when you get to be 18, 20, 22. Not when you're 9 or 10, even if you're not, involved in reproductive activities. To have to deal with all the things that occur to a little girl when she becomes a woman, to force that on her 5 years early is just painful, not just for the kid, but for the family, for the school. You wonder why there's chaos in the schools. And it's little boys and little girls. It's not just one gender. Anyway, so you go through that, and you're getting into the second phase of motivating people, and that's the phase when you get into your reproductive years. Okay, that's like I would say 20 to maybe 60. What you're interested in those years is power and beauty. So that's how you appeal to those people. And then when you get into, and this is not like it's a cutoff, avoid ridicule, power and beauty. They're like, woo, like this. And then you get into my age, and we motivate people by the message that they can avoid death and disability. So anyway, you got to get a woman or a man to change. And somehow or another, you have to speak to them in a way that's most important. Those 3 phases in life should be helpful to you if you're trying to get other people to make changes. So, pregnancy is a normal, healthy time in a woman's life, and it should be the best time in her life. And unfortunately, because of the way she eats, she has an increased risk of trisomy 21, Down syndrome. She has an increased risk of all kinds of genetic malformations due to the lack of folic acid, folic acid, plants, due to lack of plants in her diet. I know you're so folic acid pills because you don't eat enough plants. Well, you probably, it's a good idea to do that because you don't eat enough foliage. Okay, you've heard of folic acid okay. Well, anyway, if you have a deficient diet in folic acid, which you're given pills before you're pregnant, you have to take it before you're pregnant because once you're pregnant, the deformities have occurred. So you have to start, when you get into your reproductive years, you're taking folic acid pills, which is, it's good. It prevents anencephaly and spina bifida. It's a major accomplishment. But the dose of folic acid that's given to a young girl or a woman in reproductive years is the same dose that's shown to cause an increased risk of heart disease in the general population. The answer is to eat the plants. Okay. So anyway, it should be a normal, healthy time in your life. The best chance of having the best baby is a starch-based diet with fruits and vegetables. I understand why you're asking this. When I was in my reproductive years, when Mary and I were having our children, that's one of the questions I asked one of my mentors, which is Nathan Pritikin, is, I said, hey, it really is safe to eat this way. So I understand why you're really worried and concerned. But I've been at this for 46 years, ladies and gentlemen. I've studied from many points of view, including being a successful father of 3 children, and a successful grandfather of 7. I've been around the block, and I can tell you the best baby makers in the world eat starch-based diets. Think about the Chinese. Think about the Japanese, or the Vietnamese, or the people in rural Africa. Think about the Mayans and the Aztecs. I know, they were ways back, but they were from Central America. For 1,300 years, they had babies on corn. You got to rethink. You have to look at the situation and say, there must be something terribly wrong because everybody's sick, everybody's overweight. I mean, it's an exception to find people that aren't. And the people who aren't sick or overweight are either extremely moderate people, which I can't relate to, or people who've discovered the truth, and that the human being is let me make sure I get the words right. The human being is a starch eater, starchitarian, starchivore. Until you get that, until you understand that, you'll be out of control. You'll be hungry all the time. You won't have the activity, the clean skin, the muscular activity. Speaking of that, we just had the Boston Marathon just last week, and the Boston Marathon was won by 2 Kenyans. Kenyans and Ethiopians have dominated the marathons and triathlons for the last 30 years. And what do they eat? They eat a diet that's 80% corn, and the rest is vegetables. And they win all these long distance events. Power and beauty, ladies and gentlemen, power and beauty. That's what you want to sell to the people in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and probably 60s. I kind of like the power and beauty stuff too.
I remember you mentioning that Carl Lewis actually sought your nutrition advice to get to racing weight.
Yeah, he won. He set the record for the 100-meter dash. He won 3 long jump records that I don't know have been broken yet, and he won also 3 or 4 medleys. He retired at age 36, which is late in life for a track star. And if you want, you're going to go listen to the interview that I did of Carl Lewis on my radio show. It's on my website. Just go there, put in the little question bar, Carl Lewis, and you can sit and listen to an hour interview I did with him. He was my patient, the fastest man in the world.
You did pretty well, huh?
And you know what? He appeared, it's kind of interesting. Monica Seles, the #1 tennis seed, well, she saw Carl Lewis in a picture, and she looked at his body, and this is how she hired us. She said, how'd you get him to look like that? And anyway, we took care of Monica Seles for a while too, #1 tennis player in the world.
Now, Dr. McDougall, you noted we were talking about the life cycle in the early years, kids and children. A lot of people that watch this channel are mothers. They are eating a starch-based diet. And one of the things that is an obstacle for them is they say, well, my kids need to eat differently. What do you say to that?
Well, as little differently as possible. The kids are tough, and you're the parent. Good grief. And they will do better. As I say, you want to point out things that are important. And don't talk to your 16-year-old daughter about getting breast cancer, even though that is relevant.
Hey, very quickly, if you are enjoying this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. It really supports my channel.
Don't talk about your 17-year-old son about dropping of a heart attack. You need to talk about things that are relevant, such as their athletic ability, which you just talked about. You want to perform? You want to be the top player out there, then you got to eat right. So you talk about things that appeal to him. Like, for example, I've seen too many young men and women with terrible complexions, scars and horrible inflammation, and good grief, wouldn't they just love to know about a starch-based diet and the fact that this greasy American diet causes all their problems and they can get rid of them really quick? Yeah. Anyway, go ahead.
So let's say you have a nice healthy kid, and now mom is going to lose weight and get on the starch solution. So now she's the cook, and the diet's going to be changing for that kid.
Well,
Is that safe for that kid?
right, yeah, the kid should be eating just like you are. I mean, the diet for the human being is breast milk until the child is 2 to 3 years of age. That's what people eat, breast milk. And then after that, you have teeth, which can chew, and you've got hands that can grab. Okay, at that time, you introduce solid foods, and that starts about 6 months of age. It's complete by 2 or 3 years of age. And of course, to have clean breast milk, mom has to be eating right. And it's not just mom has to be eating right. She needs to have eaten properly when she was a little girl, because her pesticide load depends upon her whole many years of life. So this is a message you really need to teach to your children early, so that when your grandchildren come around, you don't have any problems. And yeah, this is the best diet for kids. I mean, if I feed Carl Lewis this way and Monica Seles this way, and hundreds of thousands of people this way, and it's the way that everybody used to eat. That's one of the things I've been talking about a lot lately. I don't, when I get into the public discussions, I don't really call it the McDougall diet, or I certainly don't call it a vegan diet. I try and teach it as a starch-based traditional diet. Traditionally, people have lived on starch. Almost everybody who's walked this earth has lived on starch. Like, for example, the Aztecs and Mayans, they were known as the people of the corn. American Indians lived on corn. You go further south to South America, to the Andes, and they lived on potatoes. They took quinoa to battle because the potatoes were too heavy. If you go to Africa, you get millet, and various kinds of tubers, and you go further east, and you run into Asians. I don't think there's a person who would not associate Asians with rice. A greeting for a Chinese person, in place of good morning, is have you had your rice today? That's what you relate to. Before 1980, 90% of the food that Asians ate was rice, white rice. And let's go to one final destination, and that is the Middle East, because that's always in the news. The Middle East, Iraq, Iran, Egypt, that used to be known as the bread basket of the world. Not the pork chop basket of the world, but the bread basket of the world. Look at your history. Even some of your recent history, look at it. And what you find is that you can verify everything I'm telling you.
Beautiful. Okay, so moving into past pregnancy, have the child, something incredible that I learned that just makes perfect sense. I'm a retired math teacher, so to my math brain, this made sense, which is that a breastfeeding woman is going to give about 700 to 1,000 calories to her newborn child through breastfeeding. So it's a beautiful weight loss mechanism for women that have just given birth. The question is, do women need to eat more to make up for this deficit?
Absolutely. And then, her appetite will force her to eat more. It's something that the change in progesterone levels causes an increase in appetite. You're supposed to eat more. Good grief, you're growing a baby, you need 80,000 extra calories. When you eat more protein, which you really don't need more of. You eat more vitamins, more minerals, more everything. And so if you did need more, but you don't, then you'd be all available because of an increase in appetite. Yes, eat. And, you should gain like 15 pounds. That's what a baby and the products of conception weigh. You should fit into the same size dresses 3 weeks after your delivery that you wore before you got pregnant. This is not a sickness. And you've heard the stories of other parts of the world where the women are in the fields. They reach down, they grab the baby, throw the baby on the backpack, and continue the picking in the fields, right? Women are tough. Women are only sick because they're so poorly nourished. I won't do this with you, but a little discussion. I always get into trouble about how this is gender biased all the way to the top. God hates women. And the reason I know that is because the way they're designed. get designed with faulty breasts that hurt, have cysts in them, and deteriorate into breast cancer. They have faulty uteruses, which bleed too heavily and form tumors in them and do not occupy, the fetus is not well occupied in their uterus. They can't eat the right amount of food because it makes them overweight. And when it gets around to having a baby and delivering a baby, the birth canal is designed too small, as we talked about. And obviously, God hates women. Listen, don't pull any stones on me. I'm just joking.
I know. We can appreciate your dry humor.
But the saying is the men die quicker, women live sicker. Okay? Men die quicker, women live sicker. You may outlive us as far as the gender is concerned, but you're going to be sicker than we are our whole lives. Not because of any frailty of a woman, it's because of the fact that the food is so damaging.
Mm. So let's fast forward to a lot of my listeners are menopause, postmenopause, and very much feel as though, well, I've gone through menopause and because of hormonal issues, weight loss is just out of the cards for me. Your thoughts?
Just follow the diet. There are no fat Chinese, or there used to not be. There are now since 1980. But prior to 1980, you didn't see any overweight people in Asia. And these people, they get pregnant, they have babies, they have stresses, they have infidelity, they lose money, their homes don't burn down. But nobody, 2 billion people, and nobody's overweight. You're not going to gain weight if you get pregnant. It's not normal. I mean, we will gain weight. You get the products of conception of 15 to 30 pounds. But you're not going to get an excessive amount of weight. Do you think your body is poorly designed? Have some respect.
Now, you as a doctor you've treated people through food, I'm sure you've seen miraculous things happen. A lot of the people that I work with are convinced that they've done so much dieting, so much damage to their body, that their body is broken and that it won't react to a starch-based diet. Have you ever seen this happen?
No. I have taken care of people in their 90s. They all show improvement. When you stop doing something that's so wrong, everybody gets better. It's just like if you ever seen a cigarette smoker stop their habit and fail to reap benefits. They stop coughing. They stop wheezing. Have you ever seen an alcoholic not stop falling down when they stop the booze? Okay? So when you take people who are being raised on all the wrong food, they're being raised on cat food and dog food and food you didn't even feed your cat or dog. The Humane Society to arrest you if you feed this cat and dog the same thing you feed your kids and your spouse. The food is so wrong. Let me give you an analogy of how this might work and you could relate to it. In medicine, general medical education, we're taught the way you help people is by changing their diet and lifestyle. Okay? Lifestyle involves exercise and psychological comfort. I don't talk about diet and lifestyle for the reasons we're going to see that are apparent right now. It's the diet. I used to have a cat. His name was Einstein. He died in the wild. No, he may have lived in the wildfires of 2017 in California. I got reports that he made it, so I'm going to believe that. But anyway, Einstein, he's my cat, and he'd come up to me every morning, and he'd bring me a treat. And he'd bring me a little bird, mouse, mole, sometimes a snake. Didn't like it. I didn't like it at all when he did that. But he did. He'd look at me, go smiling, go, "Oh, Dad, look what I brought you." Wasn't appealing to me. It's not my food. Now, just say I did a little experiment with Einstein. Just I know the animal rights people get a little upset with me, but what if I feed Einstein baked potatoes? I throw 10 baked potatoes down in front of him. What do you think's going to happen? Okay, after he bats them around for a while, doesn't eat them, what am I going to do? I want to do this experiment. So what I do is I take a gastric tube, stick it down his throat, mash the potatoes, and dump the mashed potatoes into his stomach. What do you think's going to happen? A couple weeks later, I have a dead or dying cat, don't I? Okay, so I try and fix the problem by exercise. And I take the old dog's leash and I drag the cat around the block a couple of times a day. What do you think? What do you think? What do you think Einstein's looking like? Okay. Psychological comfort, the other part of lifestyle. I'll scratch his ears, rub his belly. What do you think? Pretty good, huh? How do you think I make Einstein better? How do you think I'd get my cat back? I got to put him back on cat food. Ladies and gentlemen, the reason you're sick is because of food poisoning from the Western diet. And the food poisons are animal foods and oil, free oil, like corn, canola oil, olive oil, safflower oil. You gotta get those things out of your diet.
Yeah, the fixation on exercise is rampant. And what would you say is a healthy amount of daily movement for people that are eating a starch-based diet?
Well, I would think a good walk. I think that's reasonable. I think you ought to stay active, and walking is a normal human behavior. I think if you're going to do anything else, then you have to realize it's not for your health. It's for, excitement, sports, things like that. The reason I say that is if I think about the people I've known, friends and acquaintances I've known, who've ended up in the hospital over the last 5 years, they've been involved in their sports. They've been riding their bike and they fell in a rut, or they've been run over by a car. These kinds of extensive exercise are not healthy because you end up so injured. I mean, tell me a marathon runner that doesn't have this or that injury. So I think walking is a good exercise, and some casual weights would be good. But if you want to do more, like for example, I like to play with sharks. My sport has been windsurfing, and I don't do that for my health. Believe me, out in the Pacific Ocean, I don't do that for my health.
Are you still windsurfing?
Pretty big guys out there.
Do you still windsurf?
I haven't in a little while. But I hope to get back at it this coming summer. We lost everything, including all my windsurfing boards, in October of 2017 in the Tubbs fires in California. So it's taken us a while to get things back, but I expect to.
If that's not a testament to the starch-based diet, then I don't know what is.
Well, thank you. I worked really hard. The 13 national best-selling books I wrote, I worked really hard, and the newsletters I wrote every month from 2002 until 2018. I worked really hard. I made sure that I wrote it right, to the point where we can take those old newsletters and chapters out of my book, and we can put them right back into press without any changes, most of them. And if there's going to be any change at all, it's just a minor addition. Again, I hate to seem immodest, but I got it right the first time. And plain and simple, there are a lot of new people out there that are trying to take over the throne. That's just naturally the way it is. There are all kinds of new vegetarian, vegan doctors out there that, they'll speak bad things about some of my colleagues. Say we don't have enough fat in the diet, et cetera. First of all, I'm not going to give them a stage because they don't deserve it. After they work hard, maybe I'll give them a stage. But second of all, is anybody who claims to be a nutritional expert, anybody who claims to practice diet therapy, must understand the work of Walter Kempner from Duke University and Nathan Pritikin. If you don't understand this basic research, then you're not practicing science or diet therapy. You're off to the wrong start. The Kempner diet was a diet of rice, fruit juice, and table sugar. And he was at Duke for 7 decades. It was the financial support of Duke University for 2 decades. The results are, they're almost unbelievable, except that I know it's true because I've seen it happen. And Walter Kempner's published in our major journals his work, The Rice Diet. And Nathan Pritikin, he did an awful lot of work as far as bringing old knowledge into modern times. Now, the other thing, if you're really interested in the work of these 2 men, who are 2 of my most important mentors, I stand on the shoulders of these 2 men, as well as a couple other people. If you want to really get into details, you can learn about them by looking stuff on the internet. But you'll see that I've written articles about both of these men and all four of my mentors. And you'll also find 500 pages of research that Nathan Pritikin did that nobody has access to. It's on my website. And you'll find 1,000 pages of research that Walter Kempner did, half in German, half in English. Never released until about a month and a half ago when I put them on my website.
So you reminded me talking about the Kempner diet, thinking about white rice and fruit juice and sugar. I'm going to shout out one of your newsletters, which I'm sure you'll be able to say it was this month and this year, where you say it's what's up with glycemic index. I have sent that to so many people who believe that white potatoes, white rice spike their blood sugar, and so they can't eat it, diabetic or insulin resistant. And that newsletter is gold, talking about the baloney that glycemic index is.
Yeah, it is. And I just did I did a YouTube event for Chef AJ, and it was called In Defense of a Potato, a rebuttal to Michael Greger, Dr. Michael Greger, who is a great promoter of the glycemic index. And I encourage you to go YouTube and look that up. Look up McDougall. Look Defensive Potato, or look up McDougall and Michael Greger, or whatever. You're going to find it really quickly. And it's a little over an hour lecture that I gave in defense of the potato, and explaining that, Michael Greger is a great communicator, but he's got a few things wrong. And one thing he has wrong is about the potato, and another thing he has wrong is about the glycemic index. And you'll find my handling of this matter to be, I think, quite well done. You'll find it on YouTube. I encourage you to watch it. Yes, it's not that it's nonsense. David Jenkins, who has been a friend of mine for 40 years at Toronto University, David Jenkins discovered the glycemic index in 1982. He, as I say, is a friend, and I asked him, well, what does the glycemic index mean, David? He says, well, I'm not sure. He says, he says, I don't know what you ought to do with that information, because all it is one quality of a food. There's so many other qualities, like its fiber content, its phytochemicals, the amount of carbohydrate, protein, fats, etc. Glycemic index is one. It's just one quality of a food, which does not usually, or let's say maybe does not always represent the quality of the food. Like, for example, chocolate cake has a glycemic index that's quite low. It's 38. Okay, Snickers bars, 67%. A potato is 101. Now, you decide. Chocolate cake, Snickers bar, or potato. What would you classify as healthy? Don't use the glycemic index to do anything unless you want to write a national best-selling gimmicky book, which you've done many times.
Well, Dr. McDougall, I think we've learned one thing, which is to stay on your good side. You don't mess around.
The stakes are too great. When somebody takes and maligns a potato, they're maligning the food that I think is most likely to allow us to stay on this planet, in this home. Potatoes are the most productive of all starches. They'll grow in wet climates and in dry climates. They'll grow at high altitudes and low altitudes. The potato, the year 2008 was declared the International Year of the Potato by the World Health Organization, because they understand that the potato could be, and should be the starch that gets some of us to be on the other side of whatever's coming. And if anybody maligns a potato, you watch out. I'm Dr.
So to close, Dr. McDougall, can you give us your top 3 tips for somebody who wants to lose weight, get healthy on the McDougall diet?
Yeah, I think the first thing you need to know is you're a starch eater. Once you get that underhand, everything else follows easily. Second thing would be that there are 2 categories of food poison. Those are animal foods and oils. And I guess if weight loss is your main concern, you need to put this mantra in your mind all day long. All day long, you need to say this to yourself. Before you go to bed, before you eat breakfast, 150 times a day. The fat I eat is the fat I wear.
Can I ask you a question? That reminded me.
In other words, you put a tablespoon of olive oil on your salad. Where do you think it's going to go? It goes to your hips and lips and a little on your skin to feed the pimples.
May I ask you a question?
Mm.
I know that your wife, Mary, has a great speech about dining out. I have people who go to Italian restaurants or Mexican restaurants, and they say we can do low oil, but we can't do no oil.
Yeah.
What do they do?
Well, it depends on you. You know, there are people who need to be perfect. Fortunately, the human body is tough. I mean, I've tested it. It puts up with 2 packs of cigarettes, a half a bottle of whiskey, and hot dogs wrapped in bacon, and it lives. So, you know, it depends on what your goals are. You know, I take care of people who have breast cancer, uterine cancer, who have heart disease, they've had heart surgery, you know, they have diabetes, and they need to get well really quick. But that's kind of for you to decide. I have never taught anybody a compromise. You know, I teach it really clear so that you can decide. As my son, who's a professor at Oregon Health and Science University in medicine, my son, when he's taking care of patients, he says, Dad, I don't have to tell them ways that they could be less lenient. Dad, they cheat on their own. So, you know, I just, believe me, so we teach them. We run a 12-day telemedicine program that anybody who's real serious about getting well, you come to our website, we'll sign you up. And we'll take care of you. We do telemedicine. That means a doctor sees you. And we have a staff of people that'll get you through 12 days. And you'll get on the other side of 12 days and you go, why didn't I do this before?
It's a fantastic program, and absolutely. So tip number 1, we are starch eaters. Tip number 2, poison is animal products and oils. And what's tip number 3?
The fat I eat is the fat I wear.
Alrighty. Well, thank you so much.
The losing weight, you know, it's from my lips to my hips. That's where fat goes. So if you're losing weight, you got to get the oil out. It's just too loaded with concentrated calories.
This has been such a pleasure and such an honor for me to interview. So thank you so much for coming on my channel.
I enjoyed talking to you also. So anyway, I hope it works out well anytime.
I hope that you enjoyed this video even half as much as I did. It was such a pleasure to interview the man himself. Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe if you are not already, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Mwah! Woo!